right here is because I went out to go grab some Burger King, and I'm just driving back home right now, and I'm just chewing on shit. This is Deltarune related technically, but there's no. I'll try to avoid Chapter 5 like spoiler discussion for any of you guys who may not have touched it yet. But it's just like right now, Chapter 5 has me kind of like Deltarune as a whole really has me kind of reevaluating like how I approach storytelling and like the kinds of stories that I have been telling and like to tell. Because I think first off, despite the fact that Toby himself would say things like, I'm not original, and to some extent that might even be true, right? Like a bunch of people point out that a lot of the beats from Undertale and Deltarune are taken from, Earthbound and like these games Toby likes. But I think it's also fair to say that for Deltarune specifically, it feels like very one-of-one, unique to me. No other story really has this same relationship back to, well, in this case it's the player, but the more, I would really like a more general term here that encompasses reader for books, watcher for movies, reader for also comics, like the person engaging with the story. I really hate the phrase media at this point. It's kind of side tangent. Point is, like, Deltarune has a really unique relationship to us as the player, us as the engager with these stories. And it makes me so mad because it's like, at least for me, I find so much of Deltarune's plot compelling on so many levels, but it's only that compelling, in part, honestly, because it has Undertale behind it. That's what drives a lot of the intrigue. If it was just Deltarune, it'd still be good, but it definitely wouldn't be as good. Because all of the thematic connections and, I don't want to say grounding, but the frame in which we analyze this story and is obviously tied back into Undertale, and it's like, well, unless I release a massively successful thing and then could follow it up with like another game, I can't get that same setup, and it's blah blah blah, comparison is the thief of joy, that kind of thing. It's just like, fuck, I want to tell a story that good so bad, man. And like getting into the kind of second part here of this little tangent. So we have, like, first off, the position of Deltarune as this sequel, prequel, whatever the fuck, relation back to Undertale, and that drives a lot of its intrigue. But also I'm noticing that a lot of the things I've written so far, like not Machine's Ballad, and also technically not even Firecore, but those are also different for their own reasons. But like Fingerland, the upcoming like HPS4 kind of story, which I'm like, honestly, I'm thinking of redoing major elements of that story. I find myself drawn to kind of what I'm in my head calling the Dungeons and Dragons school of like, the players are kind of separate from the story. You as a writer, obviously, don't want that. I've probably even said the exact opposite. You don't want the players to just be separate. Well, obviously you don't, but at the most kind of fundamental level, they are, right? Players think of a character, and then it's my job as the writer to integrate them in with the story. Whereas, if you're Toby Fox and you're writing Deltarune, all of these characters exist already, and have their own lives, and these other things. And it's, I guess in that way, it's obviously the more traditional way to go about it. Establish characters, give us reasons to care about them, instead of the Dungeons and Dragons school, which is have the players make the character. So in some sense, you kind of, if you do that, you get to skip the like make people care about the characters, because the characters are made by them. The players will already care about them. You can shortcut that. The downside is that there's all this extra work you have to do to make them feel integral to the setting, and lots of narrative techniques and possibilities end up kind of closed off because you're stuck with, all of your main characters are player characters, whereas in a game like Deltarune, obviously only Chris is the player character, and everyone else are literally by definition NPCs. So, I guess all of this is to say, A, it's just on my mind and I'm thinking about it, but B, like, fuck, how can I make my stories better? I wanna tell a story as good as Deltarune. How do I fucking do that, man? Like, it's funny. It's like now some of the things that I say might come off as like the words of a complete amateur, right? Someone, and I don't mean that as like a derogatory thing. I mean that as in like someone who has yet to write stories and make things. And obviously I've only done a small few amount of things. But okay, hang on, I gotta...
Alright, just gotta hard cut the video right there, because, someone was moving furniture, and I couldn't pull into my parking spot, so now I'm having to use this thing, and actually, for the first time ever, record a segment of one of these videos indoors and sitting at my PC. So what I was gonna say was, a lot of the concerns that I'm both vocalizing, and I've already vocalized in the video, as well as just things that I'm thinking, I kind of feel like they're sort of the thoughts of, you know, someone who hasn't done any writing work yet. You know, the classic fear of like, oh, how could I ever be good at this? There's all these people who are so much better at it than me. That kind of thought process. And it's kind of like what I'm experiencing now is like, instead of getting that feeling before I learned to do anything and write anything, I'm getting that feeling kind of after I've taken on kind of, you know, the first few projects. I mean, it's not like I have a giant resume. I've stapled together Machine's Ballad over, you know what, the last 7 years of my life or so, adding to it. It's flawed because it's old, but it's kind of my baby like that. There was Thingerland, which I would argue was very successful, and I taught as like a success on my writing, but also a success for the work everybody did. Me, Thinger, Tempe, Skyla, Ash, like everyone. You know, Thingerland doesn't have like a million video, with like 1 million views and like a fandom. Thank God, honestly. But you know, the people who played it loved it, and even now in 2026, I still hear people saying that they miss it. So that tells me that was a success. We have that, Machine's Ballad, and you know, I guess also we could kind of tack in on top of the Machine's Ballad stuff, like helping Jackie out with Firecore. But this is another topic. It's like, now that I have done, you know, a few projects, and I have written the first few, it's like now I'm getting all of these fears about like, you know, oh fuck, I suck. And to kind of loop us back to where we started, I feel like I'm good at dialogue. I'd say dialogue is something I'm pretty good at. I'm alright at world building. I'm not awful at it, but it's not my strongest suit. But I would say that probably the thing that I struggle with the most is just the simple assertion of like, how do I get anyone to care? I mean, like I mentioned, Deltarune is special because it's tied back in with Undertale, and that drives so much of it. I feel like if I tried to write Deltarune, like if I was, not if I was Toby Fox, but if I tried to write Deltarune, I feel like I would struggle to make people care about these characters. I mean, I'm willing to concede, like, I may not be as good at characterizing the Deltarune cast. I mean, frankly, I just wouldn't write a story like that. That's the big thing. I don't really like writing, you know, stories involving maybe children. The whole, like, guessing game on ages thing kind of included here. But even just generally, you know, I find myself drawn to these stories of, like, heroes in fantastical worlds, not heroes in a normal world entering a fantastical world. You know, the kind of escapism that stories like Undertale and Deltarune offer. I tend to operate on a bit of a different kind of fundamental process, but it's becoming apparent to me that, you know, people clearly love these things. And not that I now feel the need to warp everything I ever write, you know, about it, but like, you know, there's these characters and people care so much for them, and I care so much for them. I mean, you know, fuck everyone else. I like these characters, I fuck with them, and I find them so compelling, but I feel like if I tried to write anything like that, it would just be, okay, you know, why do I care what this group of teenagers is doing? You know, why do I care what's going on in this town in the middle of nowhere? And there's this, like, weird... And I feel like, as well, I would also be like, oh, well, you know, there's all these plot holes about the Dark World. So what, Dark Worlds just never existed? They never came up at all of human history? Like, that's how my thinking always tends to go. I always think about the setting and, like, what would it be like if this world really developed that has these features? So in the case of Deltarune, it's, like, the Dark World, right? Like, what would the history of Earth... I mean, shit, I think it is referred to as Earth in Deltarune. What would it be like if Dark Worlds were a thing? And the problem is, you hand me, you know, this setting, I think that, and then the story just ends up being completely different. What I'm noticing as well is that people seem to love, honestly, as much as there's a bit of a perception in me that people love, you know, A, where you make sure that these things make sense and go along with the whole world, there's also seemingly a fair amount of love for type B, where you just say fuck that and ignore it. And the magical thing, at least I suppose this only really applies to like a modern fantasy setting, which I guess Deltarune would be. You know, when you have, oh, these magical things, oh, but they haven't seemingly really mattered much to the outside world for all of human history. But I can think of, I'm pretty sure Percy Jackson is like this. I've never touched any of it, so I don't know that much. Now You See Me is kind of like this, with its maybe has magic, maybe doesn't actually have magic, and those are a set of movies that I love. And it's like, I'm also now thinking about the Twitter. I'll put it on screen right now. I'll actually do some editing on one of these videos for once. The Goomba A, Goomba B walking contradiction thing. It's definitely a bit relevant right here. So, you know, I don't know, and you know, I'm sure that only like one person is gonna watch this video. Hi, Green Pig. But you know, I don't know. I find myself thinking about what the next story I want to write is and how I want to write it, because so many of the habits that I find myself falling into as an author, maybe I'm afraid of becoming constrained by them. Maybe I just see the success of another story told in a very different style and I worry. You know, for once I actually don't entirely know. I mean, this whole video is basically just me kind of rambling and getting my thoughts out. But, you know, if you're watching these and any of these other 2-cent videos, that's what these always have been. Jesus, I made the first one, you know, fuck, I was still in high school, bro. I'm done with college now, and I'm still making these. Well, damn, I hope I'm making these by the time I'm 40. I'll make these so I'm an old-ass man if YouTube is still around and I still got crap to say into a camera. And honestly, I think I'm just gonna end it right here. Yeah, Deltarune is awesome. Go play Chapter 5 if you haven't, or watch the gameplay video, guys. Give me 1 million subscribers. But I don't know, feel free if you're any of my friends or somehow are a random who stumbles upon this video, feel free to drop a comment just reflecting on anything I said here. You know, the point ain't to start some kind of massive argument, just here's a bunch of my thoughts on a video, completely off the cuff. Okay, see ya, bye.